Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Tech and Tell. And we're so glad that you're here. I thank you so much for joining us. This morning, we are welcoming back to the Tech and Tell webinar stage, I like to say, HyperDocs for beginners. And our presenter today is Ashley Winkle. And I'm so excited that Ashley is back with us today. And I'm Anne-Marie Molinari Sanders, and I am a professional development content specialist with Train PD at TCall and the host of this series. And I would like to welcome back Ashley Winkle. And I want to share a little bit with Ashley. She is now a co-worker, and I'm so pleased to say that. And Ashley Winkle is the technology and distance learning specialist for TCall at Texas A&M University. And she's also the integrating technology moderator for Links. Most of you are probably familiar with Links, which is a national professional development organization that has lots of good trainings. She is a Journeyman 2 technology coach who started in adult education as a volunteer for the Literacy Council of Tyler in Tyler, Texas in 2013. She immediately fell in love with adult education and became a high school equivalency teacher within a matter of months. There she taught high school equivalency, adult basic education classes, while also taking on the roles of director of distance learning, PD coordinator, and trainer. In August of 2020, Ashley started her position with TCall, where she is heavily involved with the Texas AEL distance learning, content development, project management, and technology integration coach program. She is extremely passionate about teaching, training, and integrating technology into the AEL instruction. Ashley has a master's of science in teaching and learning with a specialization in teaching leadership and a master's in science and business management with a specialization in online education. At this time, everyone, I'd really like you to welcome her to this Tech and Tell, and I am honored to have Ashley back. Ashley's going to take over, and welcome, Ashley.
All right, thank you. So to get started, I'm very excited to be here, and we have not done HyperDocs in several years. And when we did it in the past, there wasn't so much remote world going on. So things have changed very, very much, as we all know. And I do want to mention that this is HyperDocs for beginners. And so when I say for beginners, I'm going to take everything back to the very basics because things have changed so much over the years with HyperDocs, and you have so many different options now with tools out there. So when I say back to the basics, we're going back to how it started, which is with Google. It's going to be a Google Doc template that we're going to look at. It's only one. The objective here really is to not overwhelm you, because HyperDocs, if you've not experienced them before, they can be a lot to take in, and we don't want you to feel overwhelmed by it. We want you to really embrace this. The great thing about HyperDocs is you can use it for everything. And if you're not using Google right now, that's, of course, that's fine, but I am just going to, just kind of say that this is focused on using Google. So I am going to show you some things to do with the template to kind of help get you going. But, if you don't use Google at all for what we're doing today, you would want to have a Gmail account, and you would probably want to get yourself familiarized with basic Google features. But we're going to go ahead and get started so that we can get through everything. So our objectives today are going to be to define and understand the components of a basic HyperDoc, and also to create a HyperDoc using a HyperDoc Google template. So to get us started, right off the bat, what I'd like to do is just have a little bit of a chat. What I'm kind of looking for is what technology tools, techniques, and or strategies you're currently using to keep your students engaged. And this can be in a face-to-face environment or a remote environment, because I know that these days we're doing a combination of everything. I think a lot of people are still doing remote learning, probably not 100% face-to-face. So any tools that you love to use with your students, or if you don't, maybe you don't use technology very much, that's okay. Maybe you can tell me about some strategies that you like to use, but the real focus is how are you keeping those students engaged? And Tiffany, Nearpod, yes. And she's really good at Nearpod. Yeah, Nearpod is an amazing tool, especially in remote learning. I see Google Forms, which is another great one. I use Google Forms. If nothing else, it gets the job done. That's, it's simple to use. It's easy to use. It's a great tool. Blackboard, okay, the learning management system. That has a lot of features on it. I haven't seen Blackboard in years, but what I know is that has a lot of features that you can use. Microsoft Teams, emails, Word, Burlington English, WhatsApp, great. So we've got communication tools, along with, looks like a distance learning program. Okay, so we've got a couple of different ideas. And I think more and more people are using technology now for obvious reasons from our last year, which is great for people like me, but it has been very hard, I know, on a lot of people if you had never used it before. Christy says whiteboard. That is me very intrigued. Whiteboard.5. Huh. Okay. I have to look into that one, Christy. So my real point here is that, you're already using tools. And if you're not using tools, that's okay. You probably have different strategies or techniques that you use. And the real point of this is you can take all of those things, though, and you can bring them together in one HyperDoc lesson. Ooh, that's good to know. And it's free, Tiffany says, from the whiteboard.fi. Is that what it is? But anyway, so really what I consider a HyperDoc now, if you do it the way that I feel it should be done, it's kind of what I've termed as a power lesson. So you take the best of both worlds. So take your digital and take your face-to-face, your best practices in both. And if you can bring them together, especially in a face-to-face classroom, obviously, that is just like, to me, the best thing that you can do. So bring your digital in, but still bring those activities that you do in person all together in one place. So we're going to just talk about defining HyperDocs for a moment. So HyperDocs are defined in a lot of ways, but this is a quote that they've recently updated their website, and so this is the most recent quote and definition that they've provided for us. But it's really the ultimate change agent in the blended learning classroom. With strong educational philosophies built into each one, HyperDocs have the potential to shift the way you instruct with technology. They are created by teachers and given to students to engage, educate, and even inspire learning. So it's really, really targeted. It's very much student-focused, student-centered, and highly, highly interactive. But during it, what you find, though, is students are even more inspired to learn because they have an opportunity to go out and explore for themselves. But, and I love this line because it's important, it's not about teaching technology, it's about using technology to teach. And the part that I love the most is, as we use technology to teach, the students use technology to not only learn the content, but also to develop literacy skills in the process. So I'm not just teaching my students how to type and how to, go on the internet and, do different things, but I'm bringing everything together. I'm able to teach the content, and they are developing those tools as we go. So a technical definition of HyperDocs is it's a digital lesson with links to a variety of media on a given topic for students to consume information and include one or more opportunities for students to connect beyond the classroom, collaborate, create, or show what they know, share, reflect, and or incorporate extension activities. But a simpler definition that I usually use when people go, what the heck is a HyperDoc? And I'm like, that's really complicated. But the best way to put it, I feel, is it's an interactive digital lesson that replaces the worksheet and lecture method of delivering instruction. So HyperDocs started with these ladies here who I love. They call them the HyperDocs girls. And their names are Lisa Highfill, Sarah Landis, and Kelly Hilton. And if you ever have an opportunity to watch them present, like they do a lot of free presentations online, I really recommend it, because whenever you attend one of their sessions, I actually got to attend their session at ISTE last year, and it was just, it felt like a party. Like that's how they are. They're just super fun. And they developed this in 2016, really out of a need to create a way for teachers to instruct effectively with technology while simultaneously accomplishing all they are required to do. So in 2016, these ladies created they wrote a book called the HyperDoc Handbook. And in 2017 is when I came across HyperDocs randomly. I think Risa Wingfield, who was my boss at the time, that she actually came across them and threw them my way. And so I immediately purchased this book because I was just amazed. And it completely transformed my teaching. Everything changed once I started using them. So we are now looking at, so this is going to be the template. Now, I will tell you that there are a lot of other templates available out there. I always liked this one. This was my go-to template. This is how I started. And this is the one I recommend starting with, because I feel it really provides all the components of a really good lesson. So we're going to go through the components of a basic HyperDoc. But instead of looking at the HyperDoc as a whole, as I've done in the past, what I've done is I've broken each section down for you to follow along on the slides. And they are, the sections, as you can see, are titled Engage, Explore, Explain, Apply, Share, Reflect, and Extend. So really just based on just looking at the major headings of each section, what thoughts do you have when you look at this? Does it make you think of anything else that we do every day in lessons? Great. Yeah. Bloom's taxonomy, lesson cycle, layout for lesson plan. Yes. That's kind of what I was going for there. So yeah, it's a lesson plan that's already laid out for me. And the nice thing is, what I love is with our standards, now 3.0 and 2.0, but when all of that came out, we kind of looked at it, and I had already been using HyperDocs at that time, and we kind of looked at it and I'm like, they go beautifully together. I'm still able to use my HyperDoc, and it just combines well. And what's nice about the templates is they really walk you through your process. So you're not just on your own, it really guides you through the entire process. All right, so we're going to get into it here. So we're going to go through each section. And what's going to happen is I'm going to show you what each section is asking for. And then we're going to look at an actual example of a lesson that I did, but it was actually a professional development lesson that I did on HyperDocs, probably one of my very first ever, because it was a face-to-face lesson. So it was probably back in 2018, somewhere in there, to see how we can incorporate this. So our first section is our Engage section. So in this section, this is going to be to engage students at the beginning of a lesson. So what I want to do in this section is I want to insert maybe a video or an image. Perhaps I want a quote or an inspirational hook, something to really get their attention. So this is, we're trying to bring them in, right? This is the hook of our lesson, which we're doing that anyway. When we start, well, hopefully we are. When we start a lesson, we want to, kind of get them into it, right? So this is where we're going to do it. And so an example here in what I had done in this particular lesson is I put an image, but with this image, if you click on the picture, it would actually take you to the video itself. My audience in this case was my staff, and we watched this just to kind of give them a nice overview of what HyperDocs are. And then afterwards, I have them come back to my HyperDoc, and in 1 or 2 words, what thoughts do you have about HyperDocs so far? Type your answer on this answer garden. And so I'm going to just go ahead and click on it just so you can see. Of course, I have to move this to the right screen. So this took me to an answer garden, quick, easy collaboration tool. You see, these are their thoughts. I get to see everything they're thinking all at one time. So just kind of a great way to get it started off. So the whole thing is, what I really like is, and what you'll notice is really, I could be doing this together with my class, and they're engaging with the document as we're going, or they could do this on their own. So if you miss my class, you still don't have to miss the lesson. It's usually better if you're there, especially if we're talking about our HSE students or ESL students, any of our students. It's better always to have you there because, they tend to need some guidance. But if they're not, and you have a stronger student, you do have an opportunity for that stronger student to move forward and differentiate your instruction so that they cannot feel like they're being held back. So our next section is going to be our explore section. This is our second step. So this is where the teacher might curate a collection of resources for the students to explore. So we want them to go and look. What's out there? What do you find? Instead of me just feeding you the information, why don't you bring it back to me? So I might give them some direction on this instead of just saying, just go out there and look. I don't want to do that. I want to already find some very quality things out there. Maybe give them some articles to look at, some videos to explore, or some infographics, or even text excerpts. It's whatever you want them to explore. I mean, it doesn't even have to necessarily be digital. If you have something, in your classroom that you would rather they look at, or maybe you feel better about, maybe you don't have the technology, if you feel like they need a piece of paper and they need to look at it, just depends on what your content is and what you want to do with it. So in my example, we do a HyperDocs tour. So what that means is, again, my participants, they clicked on the image, and the image then took them to what's called a HyperDocs tour, and they got to go through the document to learn about HyperDocs. And again, as they're doing it, they come back to the HyperDoc itself. That's kind of the point, is like you go out and explore, but you're constantly coming back to your document and interacting with it. And I have them list 3 reasons to use HyperDocs. They type their answers in the table below. So then we move on to our explain section. And in this section, you explain the lesson objective through direct instruction using your favorite web tool, or gather students together to teach the content. So you're still important. You really are. A lot of times people will say, well, what am I supposed to do? You're doing a lot more probably, because this might be the part where you need to model something. This might be the part where you need to do maybe a short lecture, something like this. Or this might be the part that, you're doing something together as a class. It's up to you. It's very flexible, and that's what I really like about it. But this is really where you're kind of bringing the whole class together. You're going to go through something with them. And on this one, what we did is I had them go to a website that I made that is called HyperDocs for Adult Educators. It's not like an official website. I didn't buy a domain or anything, but it's basically where I decided to store my HyperDocs, because what was happening is I had so many at one point that I was like, I really need a better organization system here, because I need somewhere, but because I want other people to have access as well. That was really my purpose, because, I make these, I love to make them, and they work so well in my classroom, but other people might not want to make them. So I created this little website, and I had the, this is where you'll see templates, subjects that we've done professional development. We've done a lot of different things with them. And it also gives you, some how-to guidelines and things like that. But I wanted the teachers to explore it, and then, kind of go look at the website, and they come back and they, list 3 things that you can learn, and different things like that. So again, I'm constantly, no matter what I'm doing, so if this was more of me lecturing, I still want the students to be documenting as they go. So they are constantly interacting with my lesson. The next step is my apply section. And this is where you're going to create an assignment for students to apply what they learned by using web tools to create, collaborate, and or connect beyond the classroom. So what does that look like? So for me in this situation, this might be group work. It doesn't have to just be a student by themselves working on one HyperDoc, it doesn't have to be independent. We can also bring group work into that situation. So in this one, I had, my participants break into groups, find a traditional lesson plan, go to the templates page, choose the template, make a copy of it, and share the document with their group members so everybody has access to the same one. I also provided them with some guidelines and what that looked like. And honestly, I forgot I even did this until I saw this the other day, but I kind of, helped them out to kind of guide them through the process. So it made things a little bit easier for them. And you may want to do something like that for your students so they don't feel like they're on their own. Kind of provide them with a little bit of guidance to help them through their process. And then they turned their lesson into a digital lesson. So they basically took a traditional lesson and turned it into a HyperDoc lesson. And then I had them, we used Google Classroom at that time. I had them turn it into Google Classroom. Sorry, go there that fast. But then we moved on then to the share section. So this is where, you have an opportunity for students to share their work. So you collect student work to provide feedback and or include a section for students to share work with an authentic audience. This is where those tools that I know a lot of us have heard about, something maybe like a Wakelet or a Padlet is probably the one that more people are familiar with. And we've had a couple Tech and Tells on that, I know, recently. And I think we have another one coming up, a Math Tech and Tell on Padlet. And this is where they go to Padlet and they share their HyperDoc with their colleagues. So if I click on my Padlet, these were the things that some of them came up with. Some of them were being funny. They did one on how to be a man, which is fine because they still did the same thing. Some of them did, ESL, some did, telltale heart or fractions. So they all did different things and, they worked together to do it. And then they all got to see what they came up with. Okay, get my right screen up here. All right, so then we move on to the reflect section, which to me, when I always knew I should be doing exit tickets, but sometimes I'd forget. But this always was good for me because it was like a reminder that, it is important for us to hear back from the students. So it's an opportunity for face-to-face or digital reflection to guide students along their learning progression and set new goals. And it's kind of an opportunity for you as well, to see what did they learn, what things work best, that sort of a thing. And just for the students to really reflect on the learning process. And then our final section is the extend section. So this is where you have another opportunity for a little bit more differentiation, because on this section, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add links to more activities and online resources to extend learning. Now, this works really nicely in one way in particular. I always laugh a little bit because I always felt like I always had at least one or two of those students that were younger and faster on the computer or anything else, and they just fly through things. And then they go, now what? I'm all done. And, which is kind of one of my pet peeves, to be honest. And I'm like, well, now what you get to do is you get to go to the extend section where I've provided them opportunity to continue their learning. So you may have activities. Maybe it's just a Kahoot game because, you can do not Kahoot. I didn't mean quizzes or something, or Quizlet or something like that. It might be a game. It might just be other activities. It might just be a website to go learn more. Something like that to keep the learning going. Or it could just be that the student feels they need more practice. Maybe it's a grammar lesson and they need more practice with their grammar. Well, I might provide links to great grammar websites that they can go and practice more. So in this case, obviously, I kept everything about HyperDocs. I had put, training slides and the HyperDocs website, our website, and, just what I feel are the best resources out there that are in regards to HyperDocs. So each component then is delivered through one Google document or slide. Very easy to use Google Slides. Sometimes I like Google Slides better because you have more flexibility. It just depends how visual you want to make it. If I want it to be a little bit more visual, or I'm just feeling more creative, I'll use a Google Slide. But in this case, it's going to be, just a Google document. And I'm going to pull it up because you can see what the whole package looked like for them. So my class saw this. This is what they're going to see on their end. And you just see that I basically took everything we walked through and I just have it all in one place, which is kind of what I like. I basically curated everything into one place. And now if the student says to me, what did I miss? I tell them to go to Google Classroom because that's where I stored everything. And they can start working on the assignment. Or if they kind of contact me from home, they can also start working on it from home if they have the technology to do that. And yes, I am realistic. I know they don't all have it. And I am going to say that this type of a lesson that I just took you through, I'm kind of, when I set it up, I did consider that I had a beautiful computer lab. I also know that not everybody does. I also know that with some of us are doing remote learning. Not all of those things might work that well in that situation. So you have to think about your technology, obviously, which is what we have to do anyway. I would probably change things quite a bit if I knew that they were just on cell phones, but I'll get into that more a little bit later. We're going to look at just some samples. So instead of looking at, these amazing things that people have done, and I will tell you, people have done some amazing things with HyperDocs. But it can almost feel overwhelming maybe the first time because you're like, oh my God, how many hours did this take? Which is always something that comes up. You can spend weeks on a HyperDoc, but most of us don't have weeks. You can also do it in 45 minutes. So what we're focused on today is the 45-minute version, probably. And a lot of creating HyperDocs has to do with, what do you already know? What resources do you already have? Do you know the content? Like that has always been my biggest challenge is, especially teaching HSE courses. I had to go learn a lot of times, like I would refresh my memory, things like that. So that's what I found took so much of my time. But then finding the resources, if I don't have them, sometimes that can take a little bit of time. But what I've done in the past, what I've done is I've shown, these amazing things that other people have done. K through 12 teachers have done really, really crazy things, but of course they're K through 12. So we always have to alter them to meet our needs. But instead of that, I took different lessons and I got permission from these teachers. They know that I'm doing this to kind of share what they did when they first did it. And I'm going to tell you that some of these were coming from teachers who were petrified of technology. I'm not talking a little bit scared. They were just like, no, I'm awful, throw their hands up in the air type of people who didn't want to do it, but they were willing to try. So I just kind of wanted to show you what a HyperDoc might look like, when you first get started. I don't even know which one to choose. I was going to base it on the audience, but we have everybody here. So I'm just going to probably start with ESL because I don't see ESL. Sometimes I don't see my ESL teachers at the time anyhow, they didn't like technology at all, ever. So when I could get any of them to do it, I was really, really excited. And luckily there were a couple that were willing to at least try. And I did sit with them a little bit to kind of help out. So this one was a Hibernation's HyperDoc lesson plan. So she says, read the quotes, discuss the quotes with the neighbors. She puts some images in here, about hibernation. And then she has them click on a link. So you see, sometimes you want to have them actually, especially in the beginning with students, actually literally say, click here, until they get used to, because this is a training opportunity for you with your students as well. They get used to this. My students were pretty much trained at the end. They knew exactly what to do. But it then took her to vocabulary.com. So that's another great resource that we love that she could use. And then here's the theme. And then she made a little quiz on, somebody mentioned Google Forms. So she had them take this quiz on Google Forms, and then she could see the answers. And she keeps going. So she has them look at YouTube videos to explore how she did it. Then she has them go on a little web quest, go look at the internet, see what you come up with. And then they explain after a short discussion. I don't really know what this is because I don't teach ESL. So there was something else they went through. And then she does a little reflection at the end. This was a family literacy thing. I think she had ESL and family literacy for this. And then her extend was go explore the animals and also a trip. So this was her very first one, and she did it. And, but she just followed the directions. She walked through the template for each thing. I'm going to also pull up at least one more. So we'll look at the math. This one was done. Okay, I did pick this for a reason. So I used to work with a lady named Rebecca. And Rebecca, I think Anne-Marie may recognize that name because she used to attend our Tech and Tells, and she was very challenged with technology. But she did this, mostly on her own. She just wanted to teach the students, quick multiplying 2 digits. And she ended up going on and making a lot of HyperDocs, which I didn't even know she was doing it. But I happened to be on her Google Classroom one day and I saw she was doing it a lot. And I was pretty impressed. But, it's nothing super fancy. She adds some links, she adds some tables to answer questions, and they're constantly exploring, but they're constantly coming back to their document and interacting with it. And she goes through, and again, you see the infamous Padlet to share their problems, and then they reflect and then extend learning again. So she's doing the same thing. I just kind of wanted to show, what it looks like, because when you first get started, you're like, this is a lot and it's not right. But they did ask for a little guidance, but mostly what they asked for was for me to look at it. And I just kind of showed them things like how to insert a YouTube video or how to make it prettier, things like that. But they came. So it's basically taking the things you already know and using tools that you already like, and you're just bringing it all together.
We actually do have a question.
Okay.
Thank you, Rocio. Are you going to show us how to embed videos?
Yes, I am. That's actually where we're going to go to next, is we're going to get into the how-to part of it. So those are the things that I'm going to actually walk you through. And which is why I'm really excited for this type of a session, because we've never had an opportunity to do that before. Even when I've tried to do a how-to, I realized we brought too many things in, and this time we're making it more specific. So thank you for asking that question. All right, so we're going to get into exactly that. So how to create HyperDocs. I wanted to just because I know that at a session I did a few years ago, I think for Literacy Texas or Taylor or somewhere, someone actually asked me, they said, well, what is your process? And it hadn't occurred to me that that's a really good question. So these are things I think about as I'm planning one. Identify your target audience. That may sound pretty obvious, but it's important. It's like I said, identify, who am I teaching to? Do I teach, an HSE and ABE class? Can I use the same thing? Do I have to change those questions? But also, what's my technology look like? Because a HyperDoc can be really, really tech, or it can be really simple. I might be using technology where the students have to have accounts, that are connected to me. Or maybe I don't want all that complication and I just want to keep it simple. Use something like somebody said, a Google form. Google form is pretty simple. They just answer the questions and I get them, So it's very important that you know your audience, you know your students and their technology levels. Choose your subject matter content. Obviously, that's, what we're going to do in a lesson plan anyway. And then specify the academic skills and content standards you want to target, because this is still a lesson plan. So we are still going after those. And a lot of times when I create a HyperDoc, I will even put like at the bottom or the top somewhere for a future teacher what standards I was going after in that lesson. Determine the big ideas you would like your students to explore. Research or select material that might be useful to use in your HyperDoc. I tend to go through a brainstorming process and put a bunch of things together that might work. I usually put mine on a Wakelet or something that I can just put all my stuff right there. And then I go back to it once I get started. And then, of course, create a rough draft lesson plan. I usually, with my HyperDoc, I usually do the lesson plan either together, as I go through. And then finally, select a HyperDoc template to get me started. The beautiful thing about the templates is they walk you through step by step. So you're definitely not on your own. And that is really how I started doing it. What we're going to do then is we're going to talk about the templates themselves. So HyperDoc templates are all over the place. To be honest with you, you could Google it and you're going to find all sorts of them that way. These are the 3 sites I find most useful for finding templates. So I just went ahead and shared those. But I had already showed you, the website I use. It's my own. So of course I use it. But I'm just going to kind of show you what I would do, just the process I would go. So I would go to my website. I have a HyperDocs template page set up. Great. I'm just going to click on basic. And then I'm just going to go look at basic template 1. And of course, if you're not familiar with Google, that's why this is important to explain, is I'm going to make a copy of it because I want it to be mine. Right now, I can't do anything with it because somebody else owns the document. But the beautiful thing is we can make it our own. I'm going to go to File. I'm going to make a copy. And you can change, you can change the title if you want. I'm just going to put sample. And then I'm going to put it right now. It's in somebody else's folder. I want it to be on my Google. So I'm going to go back to my Google Drive. I'll probably find a place. I'll just put it in here for right now. And then I'm just going to select. So now it's mine. You'll see it load for a second, but so now it's mine. So now I can do whatever I want with this. The other thing that's nice is if you don't like exactly, if you want to add something to this, you can do that. I mean, it's your lesson. You get to do whatever you want. I often will do is add maybe a pre-assessment section or pre-reading section, or maybe a vocabulary section if we're doing a reading lesson, something for them to get familiarized with what we're about to do. And a lot of times what I've had to do is give a little historical background on something. So I'll just add something like that, I'll add a pre-reading section. So anyway, so this is it. And now it's yours. You can change the font, you can change whatever. You'll see that it's telling me everything to do. But I'm going to show you now, I'm going to walk you through the actual process. But before I do that, I'm just going to kind of go step by step and show you what you will see. So once you've chosen your template, as I said, file, make a copy, change the title. It's yours. You don't have to worry about anybody else typing on it or anything else unless you decide to share it with somebody else. But that you're going to do file, make a copy, which is my first step. Second step, make a copy, and then change your lesson title. Your next step is you're going to read the directions at the top. Especially, I'm not saying you have to do that every time, but it's great to get the suggestions, so you know exactly what to do with this HyperDoc. After that, you're going to follow the directions under each section. They're telling you exactly what you need to do. And then my final steps are I'm going to go back and delete my directions on the top. Give yourself credit. You made it. You should have credit for it. Most of the HyperDocs, they'll say on the bottom, it'll show you, they'll tell you, put your name next to, the little copyrighted HyperDocs template, and it's yours. Give yourself the credit that you deserve. I think to me, why that has become important to me, I didn't really care that much in the beginning, but then everybody's familiar with that teacher paid teachers website. Well, the HyperDocs community will say is not like that. They don't want us selling HyperDocs. They want us to share HyperDocs. That's really what, the philosophy is behind it. But I have seen now on their teachers pay teachers, they now are selling their HyperDocs. I kind of understand because they do take a lot of time to make. They can, but I've also seen before, I know of people who have seen their own HyperDocs that they made, somebody else took it and they were selling it on teachers pay teachers. And that's, exactly what we don't want to happen. And then of course, proofread all sections and test out all links. I cannot stress this enough. You have no idea how many times that's blown up in my face. Make sure everything works, before you actually go live. And that's just like anything else that we do. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to walk through this while I'm pulling this up. Has anything come in?
Just some really good points. Maria said also remember to save on your drive, your Google Drive when you're doing this, or does it save automatically?
It saves automatically when you use
Okay.
Google, which is why I like Google for students in particular, because it is a nightmare sometimes if we don't own the computers and they have to save it somewhere. With Google, it saves as you go, so you don't have to worry about that.
So that's a good thing to remember.
But it is, but you might not use Google. I mean, you can use other things. You don't have to use Google, and then you do need to really think about that. All right, so we're going to walk through the process, and I made a little cheat sheet here for myself, and I'm also made it available for you as well. But basically what we're going to do is maybe I've decided I want to take that same training that I just kind of walked you guys through, but I want to update it and I want to change it. So I'm going to go through my template. I'm going to change my title right off the bat. We'll just call it HyperDocs for beginners. Again, read your directions, see what they have suggestions for, and then, you can delete this and you're probably going to put your own directions, because you want to kind of tell your students what to do. And I might say something like, complete each step below, then submit to Google Classroom, however you do it, to kind of guide your students. So from there, now I'm going to go ahead and go to my engage section. I've given myself little notes so that I would have something to actually do. So this is where this is my hook, right? And there's so many different things you can do. I tend to use certain technology that I love the most, that I lean on the most, because my students are familiar with it. I'm familiar with it. And they're my favorite tools. And we probably have tech and tells for decades on some of these. But in this case, I decided I want to do an Edpuzzle video, because an Edpuzzle video is an interactive video where students can watch the video, but they actually engage with the content of the video. So I go and grab my link, and I might say something like complete the Edpuzzle lesson, then answer question. So right now I'm just putting text in there to guide my students. But now I want to actually put a link in there, right? There's different ways you can do that. The way you can go to insert, usually with Google anything, insert's going to get you there. But you can go to insert link, and you can either just put your link in there and just have the link there. But I like to actually have it say something. So we're going to pretend this is the first time anybody's done this. So I'm going to say, click here for Edpuzzle video. And so now it's there like that. Again, some of this is going to be training for your students. Sometimes they're not going to know that they're supposed to do that. So you may have to guide them. In the beginning, I always said, click here so they know exactly what to do. But I could also maybe do this differently. Again, go back to insert. I could put an image if I wanted to, and then I could link my image. So if I wanted to, let's say I just wanted some sort of image, we'll put this little guy here. So I've got an image now, and maybe I want my image to be linked to my Edpuzzle. So to do that, and I'm going to tell you, in the beginning, I worked so hard to figure out how everybody was doing this because I didn't know. And the day I figured it out, I was so proud of myself. But you click on the image, and again, you can click on insert, link, and then paste it. So what I could say instead to my students, if I didn't want to do it, this way, is I could just say, click on image to access lesson. And then what happens is your student clicks on the image and it directs them to your Edpuzzle. So there's different ways to do it. You can be fancy, or you can just be the old fashioned way. It doesn't matter. It's your lesson. You get to do what you want. And then what I like to do is I always like them to do something in that section. So I will maybe ask them a question. What did you learn from the video? Something like that. I might insert like a table is how I usually do it. So sometimes what I'll do is if I want to like have question and answer section, I'll create a little table like this and put, have the questions on this side. And then the student does is they answer on this side. Something like that. There's a lot of different ways to do it. That kind of gives you a basic idea. So from there, then I'm going to look at my Explore section. And again, this is where you're going to curate a collection of resources. It could be articles, videos, infographics, text excerpts, whatever it is that you want your students to explore. So in this one, I wanted them to explore the HyperDocs website. So HyperDocs has this, they've completely revamped their website, and some of these things they're now offering like complete courses on creating HyperDocs, but they have a lot of things that are free. Also, so I want my group to go explore the HyperDocs website. I've linked it to the exact page I want them to go to because it's free, and I'm a big fan of free things anyway. But you see, I think they've got 5 little courses here, mini courses that get the participants started. So they can go through it. And what I would probably do is take each of these, I would ask questions about when I go to make my HyperDoc. So I'm going to say, go to the HyperDocs courses. I'm going to link that because I want to get them there. So I right clicked to get my link. And so now they can just click on it. So that the first step is they're going to go to the course, and then I'm going to tell them answer the questions below. So I'm probably going to add questions to each of the videos. So I'll have them, to each course that they do. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to do my table. And I think there were 5 courses. So I'll probably ask 5 questions. And, that way they watch and they're engaging and they're showing me that they're learning as they're going. And then I'm going to go to my explain section. And here is where I will add maybe a slideshow with the intention of presenting it to the class. But I'm still going to give them the slideshow to have if they want it, in case they want to go back to it or if they want to follow along from their computer or device. So I have a little slideshow picked out already. And so I'm going to say something like, okay, let's go through the slides together, then answer the questions, something like that. I mean, you can do anything like that. And you don't have to put your questions directly on the HyperDoc itself. You can always, you could maybe do something completely different. You could use maybe your favorite quiz tool or, something like that. You can do pretty much whatever you want. But I'm going to go ahead and link my slides again.
And Ashley,
yes,
we did have a request to move through the steps just a tad bit slower.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, no worries. Yeah, no, I'm glad you said something. And I can go back if anybody needs me to. I'll just kind of review what I just did to make it. So just so you know, because I am kind of running through this quickly without realizing it. So I'll try to go a little bit slower for everybody. I understand, especially if it's your very, very first time for us. So again, what we did is we went through the engage section. And what we did is we added an Edpuzzle lesson. In the case, we ended up deciding that we wanted to use a picture. So with the picture, always remember to insert. Insert is the key to everything, usually when you're adding to your HyperDoc. And I just clicked on image and I uploaded that image from my computer. And then from there, what I did is I can right click on it and I just copied my link directly onto it. And that way the student can just click on the picture and it will take them to the Edpuzzle lesson. And then after that, what I did is I decided to insert a table for my questions and answers. And you have a lot of ways you can do this. But this side of it, the idea is that the student's going to be answering here and you're going to put your questions on the left side. We then moved to the explore section, and this is where I was going to have the participants go to the HyperDocs courses. So I again linked it by right-clicking and pulled the link up, pasted it there, and applied it. And then I would do, if I was actually doing this, is I would pull direct questions from those courses so that the student, can actually go through as they're doing the course and answer questions. And I will tell you that something that I used to do in class, which was, I was in a really good situation though. I had big screens. The students had nice big monitors. I would teach my students how to split their screens. So on one side, they would have the HyperDoc, and on the other side, they would have whatever they were looking at or researching. That way they could type and walk and read at the same time. If you don't have that situation, that's okay. What I would do sometimes is maybe pair your students up, and that way one can have the HyperDoc up and be typing, and the other one can be doing the research, or you could give them different tasks, things like that. Those are the best ways to do it. And of course, I am talking about face-to-face. We get it. I'll mention remote a little bit later. And then we went to our next section was the explain section. And I think that's where I left off. And this is where I'm probably going to be a little bit more present for the students during the lesson. So I'm providing them with the slides so that they can follow along if they want to on their computers, or they can just, follow with me. Or again, if the student is not there, they don't miss out, right? So I don't have to just send this individually. They can still go and let's take a look at, our little, basically I put key features of what we were doing today, and I just put it on a simple little Google slideshow for them to go through. And then finally, we go to our apply section. Now, here is where here's where we're going to create an assignment for students to apply what they learned by using different web tools. Well, this is the section, as you remember, where what we did is we had group work. This is a good place to use group work if you want to. And yeah, I would just have the directions from what we did, turn your lesson in. So I just put the directions. Let me open this up here. So I would just basically add, get to, break into groups, find a lesson. I'm just going to go step by step and give them the directions of what to do, and basically have them find a lesson, find a template, make a copy. And I would put very detailed directions on there, and it would be my opportunity for my students to get together and to collaborate and to learn together. And then I would go to my share section. Well, with the share section, I want to do it a little bit different. There's a lot of tools out there. Again, use what you know, use what you like. For me, and I know others in the audience, Tiffany Lee, we both really like Wakelet above anything, I think, in the whole world. So I wanted maybe try, and Wakelet's changed a lot over a year's time, but I want them to collaborate. So in this case, I've created a Wakelet for them where they all get to contribute to it. So they're going to share their HyperDoc. This is going to take them directly to the link. I've given them the directions because everybody gets to share on this. They don't even need, to have an account with Wakelet, but they still get to contribute. They just have to follow the directions. They edit it, and then they can add their link to their HyperDoc right there, and we all get to see what everyone has done. So what I would do there again is, and then I would probably go a step further with this too and ask the students to review each other's, or maybe we present them. Maybe I put them on the overhead and we look at them together, something like that, so that we're all kind of sharing and giving a little bit of peer feedback. And then we're coming towards the end, and we are now in our reflect section. You can do this any way you want to. There's a million different ways. This is probably my laziest section. Usually I do it the old-fashioned way. What did you learn? What will you, use? Just thinking about their learning. What was most helpful for your learning. Something like that, and then I usually just add a box. I insert table again. Instead of doing several, I just add one. And I might just, enter it down a few times, make it a little bigger, and then the student can just simply type in what they know. I always like to do the reflection section also, because anytime I have an opportunity to get them typing and writing, I try to take advantage of that moment, because we all know how much help they need with that. And then finally, we have our extend section, which again, that's their opportunity to learn, keep learning, right? To learn more. So grab my little cheat sheet here. I'm just going to add some links for them to go explore, just put them down. I just put a couple links on there. They can go check it out if they want to. You can put the links, you can make it fancy. You can pretty much do whatever you want. And then I'm done. But, I want to go ahead and give myself some credit. Whoops. So I'm going to go ahead and put my name on it so that I get credit for it. What I don't recommend doing is, one time I put my Twitter handle on there. Don't do that. I don't even know why I did it, because I saw somebody else do it, I guess. But I did that and then gave had the students do the HyperDoc, and everybody had my Twitter account up. So don't do that. Don't get fancy like that. That didn't do me any good at all.
Tiffany says, do you recommend teachers to do a practice run to introduce the HyperDocs before diving into the whole thing?
Absolutely. I suggest that with any technology at all that you use, but definitely with HyperDocs. And also, some of us have been using a lot of technology. Some of us have not. I would probably pull away a little bit from some technology if I was just getting started and my students had very limited technology skills. You want to really do, like, I'm comparing it to like remote learning, because I keep thinking of that, because, with remote learning, I pulled back on technology because I didn't want to overwhelm the students with too many things. And you don't want to introduce too many crazy tools at once either. So you want to keep it. That's why I'm saying, keep it simple, where, you put your text boxes directly on, so they don't keep going to too many different text tools either, because we don't want to confuse them. But I absolutely recommend doing it with another teacher, trying it out, see how it goes with them, and making sure everything works. It makes sense.
Can you go back, Ashley, to where you went and you found the template?
So there's a lot of ways to do that, because there's a lot of stuff out there on the internet these days. Let me just pull this over. So what I do is I just use my own stuff because I made it. But this HyperDocs for Adult Educators website is where I usually go, because I have everything on there for that exact reason, is so that, and you see that I have it bookmarked. So I always just click on it and I'm right there. And then I see I've got my HyperDoc templates right there and available. And we have all sorts of different templates. We even have game board templates. We have a bunch of them. But for the purposes of what I did today, is I just went to the basic templates. Some of these are updated. You also see they've got a 5Es one, if you're familiar with that framework. I don't usually use that one. I use the one that I'm showing you today, but a lot of people do. And then I just click on it and I have it. The other thing is, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Okay. There's a ton of stuff that's already made, and you can use their stuff. The nice thing is, if I were to go and I just want to see what's out there, maybe, and let's say I want to do something in, my favorite RLA, reading. And these have been made, and these are specific to adult educators because, well, I made this. So, and some of these have been taken from different people, but it's already there. But if I look at some of these I took from K through 12, I just tweaked them to make them mine. But like an example might be, this is a simpler one that I did with a Google slide. And this was for a lower level class. And it was from a ReadWorks article. And I just kind of brought that all together. But you see, I'm using my standards. It's visual. and it's engaging and it's visual. I take them to a KWL chart on Padlet. So I'm using those things that I was already using before technology came in. I had them looking at these cool visual pictures, what are they thinking, and would do different things. But if I look at this and somebody else owns it, well, I can just go to file, make a copy of the entire presentation. And then from there, I can make any change I want. But this person, whoever made it, which was me, they already did the hard work. So why should I, So I do that too. I go and I'll take something else. It's not stealing unless, it's copyrighted or they don't let me have it. I mean, you could do it where you don't want anybody to have a copy of it, and you can do that too. But usually people who like technology and do things like this, we want to share with each other. So that's an option for you as well. It can be a lot to take in, though. I understand that too. But just to kind of close it out with just a couple of things, because we've talked about creating it, which that's a whole section in itself. But now, how do we get it to the students is what comes up next. And there's a lot of different ways, but I'm going to tell you the best ways that work the most, the easiest ways. And honestly, Google Classroom by far is your best approach. And the reason why, if you're not familiar with Google Classroom, is with Google Classroom, they do the hard work for you. You're able to just like bring it in from your Google Drive directly into it. And what it does is it'll give you this option of forcing a copy for your students. So when the student actually clicks on their assignment, automatically it's their document. Okay, so they can type on it, because you have to think, if you share a document, the student's going to have to make a copy of it. It becomes very tedious. It becomes a lot of work for you, for them. And you really don't want to go through. That's how I used to do it. I used to share it with them on like my learning management system, whatever I was using at that time. And they'd go through, they'd have to make a copy, then they share it with you, and then your Gmail is exploding. Google makes it easier for you. So it automatically puts their name on it. And it's amazing. They asked how long does it take for a student to get through a lesson. That depends on what you do. The way I used to make them is I would make them units instead of just lessons, because I tended to get really, really into it. And so I would base it on the month. I would spend the extra time it would take to make it, put it together, and I would use that same HyperDoc for the entire month, tweaking it as we went. So if I found that we needed something to change, I would go ahead and change it or add to it. But usually my students would take, anywhere between 2 to 4 weeks, meaning we met twice a week for 3 hours a day. So you're talking about eight lessons. But, things might be going on during that time, but you can make them where they are one class period. It just depends how into it you get. I've had my ABE classes. I would sometimes make something very simple for them, and it would take, maybe 1 to 2 classes. But I usually anticipate it taking a couple of classes, because you have to remember they are using technology and they're even slower than we are. So that's something you want to think about too. But what I always liked is I'd have it made, and then I have my lessons for the whole entire month. They're pretty much done. I might have to make a few extra changes. I might have to, help them out here and there, but I wouldn't have to sit there and make one lesson plan after another every class. Other things you can do is you can, of course, share it on a learning management system if you use one. If you don't use one, I am talking about like Google Classroom or Schoology or Edmodo, Blackboard. There's so many things out there now. I always recommend having something, because I like having that home base and a place for my students to start. They know to come to class, they know to go to Google Classroom, and that's usually how we start. Oh, I see a question. On average, how long? Wait, sorry, my chat is not cooperating. That's why I said earlier how important it is to know what technology you're going to be using. Like she said, I was spoiled rotten. I had a computer lab. I used it every day. Life was great. But then what happened was, in March of last year, remote world happened, as we all know. And when that pandemic hit, it crippled me, if you want me to be honest, because everybody's like, oh, it's gonna be so easy for you. You're a tech person. It was not. I had to go from computers to cell phones. You can always just share a link with a student. You can have them make a copy, share it back with you using email, Remind, if you use the Remind app or WhatsApp or any communication tool. Again, that would be fine if you have a small group of students, like under 5, I would say. But if you have more than that, I do recommend using a learning management system. Sharing with educators, there's different ways you can go find stuff. There's a Facebook group that's amazing. All the educators are very helpful. If you have questions, they answer immediately. You can always find things on Twitter, the HyperDocs website. There's Padlets out there full of HyperDocs that are already made for you. Biggest thing is just to go explore. But if you want to make it easier on yourself, I would recommend starting with the website I made. So I'm going to get into how to use them and in virtual instruction. So virtual instruction completely changed my world, obviously. And I'm not going to lie, I absolutely hated it in the beginning. You can do different things. Now, we all know that the students probably 9 times out of 10 don't have computers. You can always assign this still the same way you did in the past. Like for me on Google Classroom, I would create a HyperDoc and I would put it on Google Classroom so that those students that wanted to or had computers, were comfortable with technology, could go on their own and go through a lesson. What I ended up really ultimately doing, though, was creating a HyperDoc and mostly walking through it together, step by step on Zoom. And then what I would do is take some sections. I was really careful with the technology I used. I only had them go to a website or to a tool, whatever, that I knew was very friendly on a phone, that I knew looked good on a phone. I would get on the phone. I'd get on the phone. What does it look like as a student? And I would go through the lesson, because some things are great and some things are terrible. And I ended up probably only having maybe 3 to 5 tech tools that I would use in remote situations because of that. So I would let the HyperDoc guide me. I also altered things. I didn't use so much Google. I went to Wakelets, to be honest, and I made them, and I don't want to get too into this, but instead of having them having to engage and have accounts to things too much, I would have it be more forward facing, meaning I would use a Google form where the student just had to click on the link and answer the questions. I tended to not have as many things that required as much writing, because why? They don't have a keyboard. Well, they do. It's called a cell phone. And it was things like that. I had to alter everything. Did I like it? No. It was painful, but you had to do it. You have to do what you have to do in those situations. And then I would just assign, I would assign things, but like I said, activity wise was always my biggest challenge with remote instruction. But the biggest recommendation I can make with virtual learning is don't use too much stuff. Keep it super simple. But I would still make my lessons based on a HyperDoc, no matter what. And we would just do it together. That was the biggest difference. Best practices: choose activities that can easily be done online. Choose technology tools that are mobile friendly. Test out the tools and activities with a colleague before class. I do not know how many times I was on with Mary Springer, for those people who know her, or Claire, my colleagues. We got on and we tried everything. What does it look like on Zoom? What does it look like on a phone? Heck, what does it look like on a computer? Because there are a couple that have computers and they're seeing an entirely different thing. The biggest thing is you don't want to overwhelm your students, but you also don't want to overwhelm yourself. So don't get in too deep, trying a bunch of stuff out that you're not comfortable with. Be comfortable. Use the things you're still comfortable with. And then using versus face-to-face classroom. Crowded learning. Good point, Tiffany Lee. I'm going to get distracted, so I'm just going to go ahead and finish this up for us. So face-to-face, you can use this for anything. Professional development, HSE, ESL, it doesn't matter. Whatever you teach, career pathways, it can be done. Yeah, synthesize group work, games, activities, etc. into one lesson. Integrate lecture and or modeling with HyperDoc activities. So we're still doing traditional, we're just bringing it all together in one place. Choose a variety of activity types. Do as much as you can. My biggest problem was kinetic activities because I have such a digital mind. I tended to forget to get them up and moving, get them doing group work, so I was always trying to challenge myself by finding activities to incorporate onto the HyperDoc that they were moving and doing things that weren't on a computer. Utilize technology tools that are compatible with your technology. Do not introduce too many new technology applications. As I said before, I like to create them with the idea in mind that they could do it with me or without me. That was always something I like to do, so that I could give the option of, hey, I need help with my, my writing, and I could say, hey, I have this lesson, go ahead and work on this by yourself.
And I want to say thank you again, Ashley. And everyone, once again, have a beautiful afternoon.